Blog Talk Radio.
Franchise interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews. Welcome to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship. Listen to interviews with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And now, welcome your host, Marty McDermott, and Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 14 years now, we've been asking the entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews. We have a great show today. Well, we're meeting with Justin Nihiser, the CEO of Code Ninjas. And Code Ninjas is the world's largest and fastest-growing kids coding franchise with hundreds of locations in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Their goal is to create problem solvers of tomorrow. At their centers, kids learn to code while building their own video games in a fun, safe, and inspiring environment. We're going to talk to Justin about that in just a moment on Franchise Interviews. So stick around because we have a great show.
Are you one of those special people who are willing to go after your dreams and goals? Are you ready to fulfill that dream of owning your own business with the security of a proven brand? The opportunity to take control of your future and own a Rita's Italian Ice franchise is within your reach.
Rita's is seeking success-oriented individuals who are ready to make a change in their life, and Rita's offers unparalleled training and support to assure your success. And did you know the frozen treat industry is a recession-proof industry, and there are Rita's in 23 states currently with 540 stores open. Rita's Italian Ice has been around for 25 years and is listed as a top-performing franchise by the Wall Street Journal.
Now here's the really good part. Rita's Italian Ice is a unique and amazing taste treat. It's smoother than a snow cone, and it combines ice with real fresh fruit. The real fruit adds dramatically to the taste, and it comes in over 40 flavors. The ice and fruit are mixed on site and made fresh daily, and it is delicious.
You'll want to know more about this exciting and successful franchise opportunity. Go to www.ownaritas.com and get all your questions answered. That's www.ownaritas.com to take control of your dreams and future today. You don't want to wait any longer to be a part of this adventure. www.ownaritas.com.
Hi, this is Connie McDermott, Administrative Assistant for Franchise Interviews, LLC, and you're listening to Franchise Interviews.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 14 years now, we've been asking the entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and as we were saying earlier, we have a great show today. Well, we're meeting with Justin Nihiser, the CEO of Code Ninjas. And Code Ninjas is the world's largest and fastest-growing kids coding franchise with hundreds of locations in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Hi, Justin. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Marty, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
This is my pleasure, Justin. We'd like to ask our guests, where are you calling from this morning, Justin?
I am calling from Houston, Texas.
Beautiful. Nice. And maybe, we can go back to the beginning, Justin. You can tell us a little bit about your role and what you do, and then we can talk about the history of Code Ninjas.
I've been in franchising for quite a long time. I joined Code Ninjas last year, actually almost exactly a year ago in 2020 at the, I think it was the first or second height of the pandemic here in Houston.
Wow.
So I've been thrilled to get to lead the team and the franchise part of the company since that time.
What was it about Code Ninjas, Justin, that drew you to the company? Because like you mentioned, you do have a background in franchising, so there was something about, the organization that you were interested in.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to work in kid-based and specifically kid education-based franchising for a very long time, and through that experience, when I came across Code Ninjas, it was actually by happenstance at a franchising conference where I met the founder. And while he wasn't pitching me on this incredible concept that he had created, I felt like I had heard about a special educational secret for kids, and I was blown away that there were not more competitors in the kids coding education space. And so our founder David Graham had really done a bang up job of identifying an important but missing component of education in coding for kids they're not yet in college.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about, the story, of how the whole concept even came about, Justin. We started this show 14 years ago because we found, that every business has a story. What's the Code Ninja story?
Well, it's interesting. So David Graham was a developer and a coder by trade. He had started several companies, and I think prior to Code Ninjas, he had actually had a company called Coder Camps, and that company actually ended up became purchased and acquired by Steve Wozniak's WozU company. Oh wow! And so David started to have an experience in coding education at the adult end of the spectrum. He also at that point was also an Anytime Fitness franchisee, and so he had a couple of different experiences that I think informed one of the opportunities that fell in front of him. He actually told me when I said, "How did you come up with this?" And he said, "Well, because I was with one of my boys one day at a martial arts studio, and I'm looking up, I'm seeing all the different belts on the wall. Yeah. I'm seeing this, sort of this process by which these kids can go through and belt up and learn these skills in martial arts." And he goes, "I thought to myself, why could I not apply that same type of belt system to coding education, so it's a little bit more approachable for kids to actually, become proficient in coding."
And the setting too, Justin, if you could paint a picture of the setting, it's kind of like it's a dojo, isn't it? Almost like and there's like a sensei, I guess. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we borrowed many of some of the great ideas from the martial arts world and brought them over into coding education. And so we have in our Code Ninjas centers and studios, when you walk inside, there's a dojo. The dojo, there's a setup for a number of students to come in. We have a laptop tablet set up, and then we have senseis that actually help direct the belt experience and the belt levels, and work directly with the students who come in, the code ninjas, if you will, that come in to learn coding.
I have a 13-year-old son, Justin, and when he was young, we tried to force him into sports. It was a bad idea, and he hated sports. I mean, it was just like it was painful for him to play baseball or basketball or anything, and I've always felt that there's a lot of kids out there, like my son, who would love something like Code Ninjas. He's kind of drawn to that, and I think there's a pretty big market for this service, isn't there?
There is a big market, and what's fascinating is that it's growing. We ended up, and I know we'll probably talk about this because every conversation tends to revolve around COVID-19 and how businesses have navigated that. But we ended up making some significant investments on behalf of franchise owners in the end of first quarter, and especially in the second quarter of 2021. And what was so fascinating is that the more money we spent, we wondered if we were going to hit a ceiling on the demand from families to sign up for the ongoing, belt program, what we call it Create or Junior, or one of our summer camp programs. And what we found was no, we could not find a ceiling. Wow. That there just continue to be more and more folks and families who wanted to sign their kids up for this. So this is very much an area of growth. In fact, I was chatting with our VP of education a couple of days ago about this. Microsoft actually commissioned a study and found that 93% of parents believe STEM education should be a priority in the U.S., but what was interesting is only 50% agree that it's actually a top priority for the U.S. And so what we're seeing here is an increase in demand and exposure to computer science, but there's a bit of a lag for the supply of that experience. And and thus to my comment a couple minutes ago, like we really came in early on this. When you look at the competitive landscape, it's kind of light in this specific vertical market. So we're both excited that we are up front in the, if you will, sort of the competitive race on this, but we're also delighted that the business and the population is just continuing to grow for this service as well.
There's plenty of growth in the industry, and you mentioned, maybe we could talk about, some of those benefits of STEM education, particularly, when we're talking about preparing kids for the future.
It's interesting. So when we talk to franchise candidates, and even when we talk to our own franchise owners, we have a very specific, if you will, sort of strategic perspective on why we do what we do. And there are parents, and we've commissioned our own research from a well-known, well-regarded research company called Ipsos, and the research results started coming back over the last couple of months. And one of the things we picked up on, which we knew, but we wanted to make sure we were sort of, that was our true north, is that we're not a vocational experience at Code Ninjas.
Right.
We're not working to build the next generation of Microsoft engineers. That being said, what's fascinating is that we do believe, we're preparing children to be the creators of the future. And so we want to couple, the time with us to make sure that they have the essential problem solving skills. And coding education really sort of equips those kids with those skills. This is really fascinating. So there was a study by the World Economic Forum that said that 65% of children entering primary school today will end up working in completely new job types that don't yet exist.
Wow! Oh my God!
Yeah, it's both exciting and also
scary.
Like kind of scary because you sometimes it's like what was the Ford quote, like if you ask people what they wanted a faster horse, and so if you ask mom and dad now what would you like, it's like, oh, I'd like my kid to be a coder, I'd like him to be a developer for Microsoft, and what's funny is it's like that job might not exist in the way that you think in 5, 10, or 15 years.
That's a great analogy, Justin. Yeah, that's fantastic. So Code Ninjas is rooted in educational coding and technology courses for kids. How has Code Ninjas adapted to the new and the changing technology? Technology just moves so fast, doesn't it, Justin? It's so hard to keep up.
It is, but here's what's really interesting. So, when you look at CS education, computer science education, and specifically for the 5 to 14-year-old set, it's a really sort of new and undiscovered field of opportunity. And so there's not a lot of, if you will, sort of textbooks or guideposts on how to teach kids these concepts. It's really fascinating, right?
True.
So like you think about coding, you can go to if there's still a Walden Books, you can go to a Walden Book, you can go to Barnes & Noble, you can go to Amazon.com, and you can buy, there's 10,000 books on coding, but if you look closely, what you'll find is that those are not really for kids. And the way that we believe that kids are sort of better equipped to learn how to code, and then thusly the reason we teach codes for problem solving, is we actually think that it needs to be relatively experiential, right? They have to be able to kind of put their hands on it and feel it and go through this process of trying to actually achieve a result and not just do it for the sake of doing it. And I think that's a key point for us, which is it's not so much to your question, how do we keep up with new technology? It's not so much that. It's not a question of trying to say, oh, well, the new and hot, coding language is Python, so we should make sure that we do all of our courses in Python. The question is are we effectively teaching kids why they should be coding, and then are we effectively teaching them how to code so that they see the value in it? Because if you're teaching them in Scratch or JavaScript or Unity or Python, the question is like, do they understand conceptually what they're doing? And that's more important, if you will, than the specific language that they're learning.
It's amazing how kids learn too, isn't it, Justin? I see that for my son. I mean, his brain is like a sponge. They're just able to absorb so many different things. I work with, I teach for Purdue University in the global division, and it's different working with adult learners versus kids, right? Kids seem to pick up everything, and they just absorb it, And you mentioned that experiential learning is so important. It's a different process in teaching children, isn't it, versus adults?
It absolutely is. In fact, there's a book that our VP of Education suggested, and he heavily suggested, I would point out, basically held my hand while I was on Amazon.com to buy it. He goes, you need to buy this book called Lifelong Kindergarten. And it's by a gentleman named Mitchell Resnick. He runs the Lego lab at MIT, which has got to be the world's coolest job. And, and this guy talks, and he talks extensively about, and in fact, it's actually the subtext of his book, which is cultivating creativity through projects, passion, peers, and play, the 4 Ps. And what's so interesting about this is that he's really a big proponent of play and having kids share what they're doing, work with each other, continue to iterate on these software and these coding experiences that they have, and that actually helps ingrain the understanding and the appreciation of coding in a child's brain. And you try to read from a textbook, and it just doesn't stick. But if you bring it out there and say, well, this is what we're trying to do, and oh, by the way, let's try doing this by way of of coding a video game, and all of a sudden kids are game on. no pun intended.
Exactly.
And that for us is really important. Is that we believe that kids, if you get rid of passive experience, and make it an active experience where the kids are actually creating, that's where you see the most pickup. And while I can't speak with any sort of expertise around adult education, it's just not my area of expertise. I could tell you that when kids are doing it, that's when they learn it. And that was something that was true when I was at former employer School of Rock. It was the same deal.
Yeah.
If you had a kid come in and do a music lesson, but then they didn't go and play with other kids in a band format, they ended up, it just didn't stick with them. But as soon as they had to actually do it with other kids and learn how to play that music together, it stuck in their brain. It stuck in their muscle memory. It actually stuck.
It's so true. I remember when I took my first guitar lesson when I was a kid, Justin, and I'm sitting in this little room and the guy's like smoking a pipe, and you're playing scales, and I'm like, man, this is boring. It's like, I want to get out of here. You make a lot of great points. And I'm going to pick up that book, Lifelong Kindergarten. It sounds fascinating. So it came in, during a really, one of the most challenging times to run a franchise. Maybe, in the theme of the show last year, everything seemed to just go back to COVID, Justin. How has Code Ninjas weathered the storm of COVID-19?
That's a great question. One that I'm excited to answer because we have weathered it at this point.
Thank God.
We when I came in July, August of 2020, what I found was a system that was hungry for direction and hungry for participation in their own success, and they wanted to have some agency over that discussion. What we had was an opportunity with this franchise system to enable franchise owners to give us input into what they needed during the pandemic. While we are a company built around technology and kids coding, most of what we offer is inside the center, inside the studio, and specifically inside our dojos. And when pandemic hit in last March, 18 months ago, we did not have a plan to move out of the brick and mortar setting and start to teach virtually. And much like every other company, you have to decide how do you do that. The previous leadership team had made the call at that point in March to say, hey, let's build out some educational supplemental opportunities. We call them badges for kids to do at home. And that's during a period where we didn't know how long the pandemic was going to be. And I think we were all hopeful that it was going to be a couple of months. And then what happened was, as I came in, we realized that obviously the pandemic was going to be a long-term thing. And so we made provisions. We made provisions to offer what we do and what we do so effectively in our dojos to actually offer it virtually. We worked with franchise owners to identify best practices for virtual learning, and then we were off to the races. And we had many, many centers that utilized the newly offered virtual experience for our core programming, which is an absolute testament to franchisees. Additionally, we also worked with franchisees to to understand what needs they had in terms of just sort of from an operational point of view. Obviously, there was labor management, and there were rent considerations and everything else. And so I brought in an executive team that had much in the way of franchise experience and marketing experience, strategic initiatives and partnership experience. We brought in a team that we believed could make a substantial contribution and help turn around a system that had been, overwhelmingly impacted by COVID-19. So that was the, if you will, sort of the first several months of 2020. And we actually ended up standing up a series of almost 30 different stakeholder groups across our over 200-ish franchisees that comprised at that time 290 units. And we spent weeks just sitting down with franchise owners to make sure that we were identifying the key elements of the business that needed to be focused on, that were impacted by COVID-19, or that were just required focus from us because we needed to move into the next phase of growth. Through that, we ended up rebuilding our franchise advisory committees. We ended up rebuilding our communication platforms of franchisees. We practice, if you will, sort of radical candor with our owners, and they do the same with us. Right. And we started to identify key areas of the business that we needed to focus on, specific to marketing and advertising and operational direction, that really kind of helped get us in the place we needed to be. As we moved into 2021, we ended up making significant contributions from a home office and a headquarters level on behalf of franchisees to help them plan for their summer camps. And we ended up generating just a absolute mountain of leads with franchisees, arm in arm, if you will, in lockstep, that provided them an opportunity to move into a very robust camp season. And for us, especially in children's education, as you can imagine, when summertime hits in the U.S., Canada, and the U.K., the 3 territories that we operate, this is a big opportunity zone for us to expose thousands and thousands and thousands of new kids to our education, our coding education programming. So we have, since we've undertaken these initiatives and tactically started to execute on our new strategy, we've had a significant turnaround of fortunes for our franchisees across all 3 of our territories that we operate in.
So Code Ninjas was able to pivot, and it certainly, what I got out of COVID too, Justin, is the benefits of franchising. You go back to that old cliches. You're in business for yourself, but not by yourself, and it must have been comforting to your franchisees to know that they weren't by themselves, right, during that time. And again, I know you're a big believer in franchising, but it's certainly one of the benefits of franchising, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's something that I believe, I don't think I appreciated in when I got into franchising in 2007, just how powerful franchising is, and building businesses, in lockstep with a strong home office and a strong franchisee population is major. And then one of the things that was very clear to us early on is the franchisee said, hey, there's a lot of best practices out there in the field, and we just don't feel we have all of the exposure to what's working and what's not working. And we stood up and we said, yeah, you're totally right. We really do need to start putting a paper in front of you all so you can see what works and what doesn't work. And that was huge. And I think to your point, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And so we actually ended up using there's this great platform that Facebook makes called Workplace, which is a professional company platform, and it's a robust and very active communication platform for Code Ninjas. It is as active as my entire Facebook feed with all my friends and family. It's probably more active than that on a daily basis with best practices regarding marketing and operations, merchandise, support, training, curriculum, education, anything you can imagine.
That's fantastic. I'm sure that there's many rewards to your job, Justin. But what's, if you can narrow it down, maybe what's been one of the most rewarding parts of your job?
There's 2 things. We talk internally about how we have sort of 2 clients. We have our end user, which are our families, our kids that come in every single day. to experience coding education. And on that front, knowing that we're equipping kids with these skills, and again, not vocational, but like life skills, is hugely rewarding for me personally. Knowing that I wake up every morning and I do something that's important, and that the feedback that we see from parents, we're Net Promoter Score company, and so seeing the incredibly high scores, we sit in the 87 to 88 range across our entire system, and the feedback from parents saying like this changes my kid's life, like my kid finally feels connected. This is my kid's passion. That's incredible. And that's the end user, the customer, who's our franchisee. Being able to equip our customers, our franchisees, with the programming, the platforms, the marketing, the best practices, so they can go and follow their passions. Because one of the things that I absolutely love about kids' education, and I've seen this in my entire career, is that this is a passion franchise concept. And I want to help somebody who's decided that they need to open one of these. And so many people I talk to on a weekly basis, candidates, they don't want to, they need to. And I just am so floored by their dedication and their decision to make investments in this brand that for me, it's incredibly satisfying to watch my team operate as if you will, sort of servant leaders to these franchisees, to give them the tools that they need so they can go be successful in the field. Because if they're successful in the field, that's incredibly fulfilling for myself and for my team, and we know that we're doing a good job.
So I could ask you the next question, Justin. I mean, where do you see Code Ninjas in the future? If you could look into that crystal ball, 3 years, 5 years down the road, where do you see the organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have, from a growth perspective, a unit growth perspective, we are intending and have already laid the groundwork for additional international expansion. We're already in the UK, and we plan to continue onward. And there will likely be more master franchisee involvement as we move into territories where we require and hunger for partners that have expertise in their different parts of the world. From an educational perspective, we are almost ready to debut a next iteration of our game development platform, which is what all of our core programming resides on, all the different belts and whatnot. And that is what we believe to be likely the best practice in kids coding education. So we are intending to be and continue to be the leaders in kids coding education. And we have an incredibly robust educational curriculum development team right now, as working hand in hand with our technical dev team to deliver this new development platform and new belts at some point this year. And it's It's a big deal, yeah. So we're quite excited by this, and we think this is going to continue to be, if you will, sort of appetizing to franchise owners, as well as thousands and thousands of families across the globe.
That's terrific. You've been involved in franchising for quite some time now, Justin. I mean, from everything you've learned up to this point, what advice would you give to our listeners in their quest to, buy, whether it's a Code Ninjas franchise or any franchise? Because, it seems like there's so much out there today, isn't there, to choose from? So, it's like, where do you begin? So from everything you've learned, what advice would you give to our listeners?
And so what's so fascinating with the candidates that come to us is that they almost immediately self-identify that they would be the right candidate. And this would be, if you feel strongly as a listener to the show that kids coding education is important and inarguably essential to the development of kids across the world, and you want to be a partner in delivering that experience, then I think this is a good opportunity. And I think that if you, and I do this often on my weekly calls with candidates, and I also say this, is that if you do not feel strongly about what I've just said, then this is probably the wrong concept for you. I think there are many concepts that are probably like investment first concepts with a specific, need and appetite for ROI and some sort of specific bottom line. Not that doesn't exist here, but there's a deeply passionate franchisee base that, their first focus, which it should always be this way, is in service of these kids. And so if you like working with kids and believe that coding education is strategically the way that we give kids the tools that they need to become the problem solvers of tomorrow, this would be the concept for you.
That's terrific. What's the best way, Justin, for our listeners to get more information on Code Ninjas? Of course, there's the franchise opportunity, but even the service itself. Are there any websites you can kind of direct them to?
CodeNinjas.com is going to be probably the easiest and fastest way for both, listeners who might be parents that are interested in having kids join our centers. And then, of course, if you're interested in franchising, you can also go there as well and click on the franchising button.
That's terrific. Well, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed talking to you today, Justin, and I'd already like to invite you back over the next year or so as you continue to grow, because it sounds like there's a lot of exciting things going on at Code Ninjas. So I'd love to have you back on the show in the future.
Absolutely, Marty. I really appreciate the time today.
This has been my pleasure, Justin, and we'll be right back with more franchise interviews. Coming up on segment 2, you're going to hear what every franchipreneur needs to know before buying a franchise. We're going to play a clip from our popular Great Quotes in Franchising podcast right here on Franchise Interviews.
Franchisers, are you looking to reach aspiring entrepreneurs looking to buy a franchise? Are you looking to reach a highly educated audience on franchising? For over 8 years, Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship through our website, franchiseinterviews.com, where you can hear and read interviews as well as get tips from some of the most successful sources in franchising. Our weekly franchise radio show, where each week you get to hear a new interview with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys, and our podcast, Great Quotes in Franchising. For more information, go to franchiseinterviews.com or call us at 610-905-2919. That's 610-905-2919.
Franchise Teacher.
Would you like to know how to franchise your concept or grow your franchise business?
Meet the experts at Franchise Teacher.
The goal of Franchise Teacher is to teach, coach, consult, and advise. The team of experts at Franchise Teacher will evaluate your business model and present you with a winning business strategy.
Franchise Teacher will help you decide whether or not your concept works and if it's franchisable. Franchise Teacher is proud to have over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors.
Franchise Teacher are developers of over a dozen franchise systems, which include brick and mortar as well as home-based concepts of nearly 3,000 combined franchise locations.
Whether you need to add more units or get more customers, Franchise Teacher can help. We will teach.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn our proven system.
Coach.
Franchise Teacher will help you provide a game plan to succeed.
Consult.
Franchise Teacher will make sure you stay on track.
And advise.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn from our over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors. Take advantage of our free, no-obligation phone consultation. Simply go to franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032.
That's franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032.
Hi, everyone. This is Marty McDermott from Franchise Interviews, and welcome to another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising, where each podcast you get to hear a great quote in franchising. And today's podcast is being sponsored by Diamond Financial Services. And Diamond Financial is the nation's #1 source for business loans with over 50 years of combined experience and established relationships. Financing solutions can be applied to business acquisitions, franchise purchasing or startups, building and leasehold improvements or expansions, equipment purchases, debt restructuring, working capital,
franchise fees, or simply the buying out of partners. And if you want more information on Diamond Financial Services, you can click their logo right on our show page of this podcast. Today's great quote in franchising is by Dr. Robert Needham of Franchise Inc. And Dr. Robert Needham is also a franchise author. And we had him on our show, it was about a month ago. And typically on the show we'll ask, what advice would you give to an aspiring entrepreneur looking to buy a franchise? And I thought his answer was brilliant, so here we go.
Another question we'd like to ask someone like yourself, Dr. Needham, is what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs looking to buy a franchise?
Well, first of all, it's interesting. I believe they have to first find out who they are, meaning are they prepared to work with employees? If not, then they don't need to be buying a business that's going to have a lot of employees. They need to be in a business that's maybe just them or maybe one or two others. Right. Once they do that, they really need to decide what it is they want this business to do. We have a lot of people call us and say, my wife's a great cook. I want to run a restaurant. Right. But there's a big gap between being a great cook and being a restaurateur. Right. And so what we do is we try to find out what they really, the old saying, I believe, I don't know who actually gets credit for originally quoting. It's certainly not me, but the old saying that people don't buy drills because they want drills. They buy drills because they want holes.
That's right, yeah.
What we try to do is find out what is it that they really want, and the franchise is just the vehicle to get them to their dream. So often when we're talking with them, we find out that it's freedom or financial independence, which, is really freedom still. And they really want to be able to control their own destiny or some of those kind of things. So then we start looking at the business, and we start explaining the business from that direction, and it's really independent of what the business does, because there is no perfect business, as you know. Right. Every business has something that's not great about it, and every business has something that's super fantastic about it, and we try to help them understand those various things.
That's interesting. We had a couple guests a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Needham, from Fish Window Cleaning. There was two young gentlemen. They worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car for many years, and they were very frustrated. They were working 50, 60 hours a week, I think it was, Don, they were mentioning. Right. And they were surprised at first. They ended up in the window cleaning business. They said in a million years they never imagined buying that kind of franchise, but it just match what they were looking to do. They just wanted flexible hours where they can get home early and spend weekends with their family and things like that.
Right. They did a lot of due diligence and a lot of questions and points of what they wanted in a franchise system, and that met most or maybe all of what they were looking for.
Right, and they're very happy now, so, but yeah, it was just interesting. They never pictured it in a million years.
One of our top female consultants was regional.
I love that quote from Dr. Needham. It's a famous quote. It says, people don't buy drills because they need a drill. People buy a drill because they need a hole. And, the same thing applies to franchising. People don't buy a franchise simply to buy a franchise. People buy a franchise as a means to an end, where they want more freedom or they want to spend more time with their family. So, once again, another great quote in franchising. So, again, we hope you enjoyed this podcast. And once again, we'd love to hear your feedback. And we'll see you again soon for another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising by Franchise Interviews. Take care, everyone.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.